Happy Festivus, everyone! This month's terrifying trio shines a spotlight on perhaps the most horrifying holiday of all, Christmas. If you're looking for some darkly festive entertainment, check out the titles to come. Content warning. The following films and book contain graphic, bloody violence, including murder. Weapons include blunt instruments, a fire axe, a plastic bag that leads to suffocation, a shotgun blast, a glass figurine, and more. The loss of fingers, broken bones, and assorted mayhem and near-death experiences. Viewer and reader discretion is advised. Also, spoiler alert for this month's films. Listen on and decide for yourself if you'd like to make scary Christmas movies a new holiday tradition. Our first film is the 1974 classic, Black Christmas. The movie starts with an unseen person entering a sorority house and going up to the attic. The point of view shots associated with the killer here are one of the movie's most haunting and enduring features. Jess, a college student, played by Olivia Hussey, who was actually 22 in real life when this movie was filmed, is at her sorority's Christmas party when the phone rings. Whoever is on the other end of the call has called before. No one knows who it is, but the man makes a series of disturbing sounds, moaning and screaming incoherently. The sorority sisters listen, clearly unnerved, until Barb takes the phone from Jess and drunkenly tells the man off. He then threatens to kill her. Claire, the youngest sister, retreats to her room to pack to go home for the holidays, and when their hard-drinking house mother, Mrs. McHenry, arrives, the girls give her a Christmas gift and go back to the party. As I was writing this script, I was a bit surprised to find that Black Christmas is only rated R. After all, the very first kill, Claire, suffocated with a dress bag, is arguably one of the most memorable and horrible in the history of slasher films. The point of view shots make it especially scary. The killer watches Claire before attacking, and then takes her body up to the attic, where it remains in a rocking chair for the remainder of the film. The next day, Claire's father arrives to pick her up, but she's nowhere to be found. Mrs. McHenry goes with him to a fraternity party in search of Claire. Meanwhile, Jess meets with her boyfriend Peter and explains that she's pregnant and plans to have an abortion. Peter is angry and insists they talk more later. Eventually, Jess and Barb, along with their friend Phil and Claire's father, go to the police station to report Claire missing. There they learn that a girl from the local high school is missing too. Later that night, Barb is drunk again, and after her friends get her in bed, they join the people searching for the high school student. Mrs. McHenry ventures into the attic and discovers Claire's body, at which point she too is murdered and left there. The remains of Janice, the high school student, are found in a park. And when Jess answers the phone to find it's another obscene phone call to the sorority house, she decides to file a police report. Peter surprises her first, though, and tries to convince Jess to marry him, only leaving, again, he's angry, when the police and someone from the phone company arrive to bug the phone. That way they can trace the next creepy phone call that comes in. With the phone sorted out, Jess goes upstairs and finds that Barb is having an asthma attack. She says it was brought on by a nightmare where she saw a man in the room. Jess goes back downstairs. She gets a lot of cardio in this movie through stairs alone, and listens to a group of carolers sing at the front door, while Barb is stabbed to death upstairs with a glass unicorn. Soon after, Jess receives another call. The person describes her argument with Peter, but the conversation is too short for the call to be traced. The police officer assigned to the case, Lieutenant Fuller, played by John Saxon, talks with Jess about who might be responsible for the calls. Under the circumstances, Peter seems like the most likely suspect, but Jess isn't convinced. Soon after, Jess and Phil are startled by members of the search party looking for the high school girl's killer, and they proceed to lock the doors and windows of the sorority house. Obviously, too little, too late. Phil goes into Barb's room to check on her and is murdered as a result, though this happens off-screen. Now, though she doesn't know it, Jess is alone in the house. The phone rings yet again, and this time the caller talks about two children named Agnes and Billy, and he goes on long enough for the police to trace the call. Jess is instructed by an officer over the phone to leave immediately, because the call was coming from inside the house. Jess is frightened, but she won't leave Barb and Phil. Going upstairs, she finds their bodies, and sees just the killer's eye through the gap between the door and the frame. Jess slams the door into the killer before he can shut it, and then she runs downstairs, but the killer grabs her hair. Again, she never gets a good look at him, and neither does the audience. Jess manages to make it down to the basement, where she locks the door and listens as the killer first bangs against the wood, then starts to walk away. She hears footsteps, and what sounds like the front door being opened. Upon entering the basement, Jess sees Peter looking in a window. He breaks the window to get in and approaches her, clearly concerned by her apparent panic, and as Jess retreats, she grabs a fire poker. The confrontation that follows happens off-screen. When the police reach the sorority house, they hear Jess's screams and discover her in the basement, Peter's body lying next to her in a bloody heap. It seems clear to everyone what happened. Peter must have been the killer. But as Jess is put to bed and left with an officer to keep watch outside the house, we see the real killer emerge from the attic again. The bodies upstairs still haven't been found, and Jess is left sleeping in her room, having been sedated, with the killer nearby. The fact that this movie ends without much resolution makes it extremely creepy. Was the killer in the house also the person who murdered the girl in the park? There are no direct sequels to this film, only 2 remakes, so Jess survives but seems to be on the verge of being murdered as the movie ends. What was the killer talking about on the phone? Were his ramblings totally incoherent, or was there a story there? Perhaps the enduring legacy of Black Christmas is the way that it speaks to both the endemic nature of violence against women, as well as the fact that acts of violence can seem terrifyingly random. In the beginning, we don't understand what led the killer to sneak into this particular house, or why he targeted the sorority sisters with disturbing phone calls, and by the end of the movie, we still don't know. Haunting and still striking decades later, as well as an inspiration for John Carpenter's Halloween, Black Christmas is in many ways the best holiday horror film there is. It's hard to imagine 2 more different movies in terms of tone, content, and viewing experience than A Christmas Story and Black Christmas. Both were directed by Bob Clark, a fact that is mentioned in this month's second film, Christmas, Bloody Christmas. The movie begins with a TV ad for a Santa android, which reveals that it's repurposed military technology, and thus superior to some degenerate human who might choose to play Santa. And the ad closes by revealing that the local mall and toy store have Robo-Santas in residence this holiday season. As the opening credits roll, we meet record store owner Tori, who's coming into work on a snowy Christmas Eve. She helps Jay, a regular and the husband of a friend, find a gift for his wife, Lana, an album she doesn't already own. And then, after closing, Tori and her longtime employee Robbie talk about her upcoming date with a guy she's been talking to online. She plans to get drinks with him, though she's already blown him off a couple times, but Robbie convinces Tori to have a drink with him instead. First, though, they need to drop off a gift for Lana at the toy store. On their way to a neighborhood bar, they stop by the store owned and operated by Jay and Lana. Just inside the entrance is the creepy robotic Santa from the TV ad, and though it is mostly still and silent, it randomly says, "Ho, ho, ho, Merry Christmas," and presumably other festive catchphrases on occasion. Jay and Lana are not surprised by the outburst, and they look forward to the day the machine will be picked up the following week. The 4 friends share a couple of drinks, and after Tori's pals make jokes about the guy she was planning to meet, Jay and Lana, like Robbie, know of the man, who has posted videos of himself online playing guitar and singing a lame song. Tori and Robbie leave for the bar, knowing that Jay and Lana plan to spend the night at the store. Obviously, this is how horror movies begin, but the fun of this film is knowing what's going to happen and still enjoying the ride. And the reason this one is unrated is that people in this film, all consenting adults, engage in sex before being murdered, or at least menaced, by Mecha Santa. Jay, played by Jonah Ray, is the first to die, which is somewhat ironic given that he famously gets along with robots on Mystery Science Theater 3000, but here he gets cut in half by the android Santa with a fire axe. Meanwhile, Tori and Robbie have fun drinking at the bar, aside from the brief interlude when the sheriff stops in and bums everyone out with his tale of Christmas woe, and then Robbie offers to drive Tori home. Tori and Robbie's relationship is a big part of the film. They work together and share a love of both music and horror movies, and after a night of drinking and talking, it's unsurprising they hook up at Tori's house. Quick sidebar. I have a hard time accepting that Tori really thinks Alien Covenant is the best Alien movie, but I guess it is the most memorable recent entry in the series. The soundtrack here is rock and metal, which pairs nicely with the Santa android killing people. Fortunately, this android doesn't hurry, and its rather leisurely pace means there's time for characters to interact and react to their approaching doom as the Santa android walks toward them. This is the sort of movie full of people trying to make the best choice they can under the circumstances, but then dying anyway, and it's also about bad timing. For example, when Tori and Robbie leave the bar, they hear the faint sound of Lana screaming from inside the toy store as the android Santa bludgeons her to death, and they think it's the happy sort of scream. In terms of what won't this movie do, or how far will it go, know that it doesn't show an extreme close-up of a child being murdered with an axe, but Robo-Santa does soon throw the child's body through one of Tori's windows. It's fake enough that I wasn't sure at first if it was the child or his dad, though. As a final girl, Tori makes smart choices and valiantly incapacitates the android over and over again, at least 6 times by my count. Based on 2 very entertaining explosions, cars in this film are made of nitroglycerin. Collisions almost instantly result in fire, Tori spends much of the second and third acts caked in blood, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. This movie is bloody good fun, and I rate it 3 out of 4 fire axes. Our book this month is Unholy Night, a horror retelling of the story of the 3 wise men and their famous meeting with the baby Jesus. In this novel by Seth Grahame-Smith, author of Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar aren't kings from faraway lands. They're desperate criminals looking to escape being beheaded on the order of King Herod. When they meet Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, the group is thrown together by circumstance. Herod's wrath is now focused on the firstborn of Judea, and even Balthazar is not the sort of reprobate that's okay with infant murder. Besides, everyone in the group knows they'll be safer in Egypt, but the journey is a dangerous one, and Herod's men aren't the only thing they need to watch out for. If you're looking for an offbeat and at times truly chilling tale of storied Christian figures, which manages to be unexpectedly moving too, check out this book. Christmas means many things to many people. It's a Christian holiday warped by capitalism. It's an excuse for even those of us who aren't Christian to gather with family. It's a time of music and movies that inspire strong feelings, both positive and negative. In the darkest month of the year, it's nice to look at colorful lights, though what they illuminate about our society isn't always flattering. But perhaps in horror, both movies and prose, yes, you'll glimpse the worst, but perhaps also the best of humanity. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next month with another terrifying trio.